Good luck, everyone.
Did you have the Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Oh.
Username and password are both Winter Classic. And it's
Okay.
either
It's all lowercase?
yeah.
School. And can you put me on the email chain?
Yeah. One sec.
Not my normal mouse. The one I normally use had AAA batteries that I didn't have, so I had another mouse, but not AAA battery. Alright.
Oh, there we go.
Alright. Ready when everyone else is.
I'm good.
Intellectual property theft is expanding. Disclosing 0 days bills just with companies, which is key. Chapter 15. There's a nation-state-driven problem that is much more present, much more threatening to our economic viability. The constant day in day out working factor of every major U.S. company and intellectual property. Other nation-states know we collect intelligence on them, and they collect intelligence on us. China is targeting American corporations, stealing our core intellectual property, the very thing that drives the American economy. A nation-state is engaged in effort to undermine our ability to compete in global marketplace. The government is alive with the 0 days and makes up against it. It's only when things get really hot boy that the government will hurt with its deepest darkest sort of intelligence. That's something that fundamentally has to change, freeing up that sharing gap and creating that trust with the government and private sector shares that kind of information. And IP theft destroys military operations. Barricade 13. IP is a significant driver of the American economy. 70% of corporations IP. The theft of IP is a huge impact on the economy, not only loss of revenue, but demoralizing effect on the emitter. U.S. companies lose $250 billion per year through theft. China accounts for 70% IP theft. China's cyber espionage is a major threat to U.S. military operations. China malware has penetrated network used to control the U.S. military. China hacking could shut down the electric grid. Systems we rely upon are cyber bases are Achilles heel, and Russia anti-theft now at 15. Russia is the cyber attacks against U.S. to an unprecedented level, targeting U.S. businesses pilfering intellectual property. They're trying to leverage cyber intrusion and cyber espionage. Over 10,000 Russian intrusions in 2015. Moscow doesn't care about being caught. Moscow's orchestrating targeting digital hits on the U.S. Russian cyber threat is more severe than we have previously assessed. Until government produces detection capabilities, the Russians will not be deterred. And this stuff is crucial to power efforts. Visit Alan Hamilton 13. Russia's espionage is driven by a desire to diversify its economy and reduce its dependence on the natural resources. Russia's foreign intelligence service is supporting the process of modernization, creating conditions for development. I mean that threatens companies, defense technologies, and secret home U.S. industries, government networks, China and Russian military advantages worth billions. And that causes Russian aggression. England Shop 15. 100 new Russian aircraft, tanks, and missiles are rolling off the assembly lines. Tens of thousands of troops join the military's readiness for war. Russian military needs NATO as the top of charge. The nation's 1 million strong military is beefing up its presence. Russia is opening a new military base in the Arctic, planning to send strategic bombers on regular patrols as far as the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. The military's sister Longbane and NATO. Its security enhanced by new look military, the Kremlin can be expected to pursue a defiant course in Ukraine and marries the seeks further if the peace process fails. The threat for Putin's whether massive military buildup will stretch the nation's economic potential beyond the limit, and nuclear escalation. We're already on the brink of nuclear war. Week 15. In waging war, Putin would rely on the first use of tactical nuclear weapons. The crisis is an existential moment for the Western Alliance. The U.S. is rising a military challenge posed by Russian expansionism. Carter Obama is nominated to serve as the Secretary of Defense, clear support for providing the arms to the U.S. military. To the Ukrainian military. Putin renewed his threats against the world war. He dispatched nuclear-capable bomber. He sent nuclear-capable cruise missiles to the Polish border. He has proclaimed the readiness to use nuclear weapons opening, threatening shipping with tactical nuclear weapons. Putin has lowered the threshold for using nuclear weapons. Putin predicts the risk of third total war. If one side loses its nerve in this inflamed atmosphere, then we won't survive the coming years. Putin's culture of terror brought us to the brink of a nuclear standoff where the risk of miscalculation is large. Putin's aggressive military posture and returning us to the nuclear threats and advantage to critical infrastructure. Effective information sharing prevents devastating attacks on critical infrastructure. Bush 15. Many organizations face cyber threats. As an attacker learns of a vulnerability, every company that uses products is at risk. Critical infrastructure providers find information sharing with their government partners and the national intelligence law enforcement community is very difficult because it raises sensitive and complex issues. The cyber defense of our critical infrastructure simply is not possible without cyber information sharing between communities. The information sharing would not let the NSA warn to contract with what was about to happen. The issue has been elevated by the recent cyber attacks on large companies, and 0 days are key. Inadequate cooperation for electricity and water sectors. Stockton and Goldbeck Goldman 13. 0-day exploits gather sensitive information and capture computer systems that reflect widespread physical damage. A weaponized 0-day exploit targeting the air traffic control system could send false signals plain. An attack on the grid could leave entire regions in the dark and capturing the economy and resulting casualties. The most potent and dangerous 0-day exploit attacks are those that target the nation's critical infrastructure sectors. The air traffic control and transportation consider critical infrastructure, the chemical communications, emergency services, financial, water, power, and nuclear reactor sectors. Private companies operate and monitor critical infrastructure by relying on the industrial control systems. Internet and connectivity render these systems susceptible to 0-day exploit attacks. The government failed to provide sufficient support to private companies to safeguard the nation's critical infrastructure, and attacks without command and control leads to nuclear retaliation until 412. A cyber attack can take out civilian power over the same groups that supply cities and power over military base on country. Command and control systems could be dark. Radar systems are shut down completely. A cyber attack against the U.S. could be seen as an act of war met with full-scale U.S. military response to nuclear weapons, and water supplies are vulnerable to cyber attacks. Figure 15. Homeland Security reports highlighted poor security among the nation's water utility networks and inadequately comparable to the stable of industrial cybersecurity programs that have many inherent flaws. The smallest error in these configurations introduce vulnerabilities. Defects are frequently discovered, which can be exploited as vulnerabilities. Bidirectional data flows can be used to launch attacks systems to the protected network. The risk of the level of risk is unacceptably high. And water security risk global war. Link 15. Water shortages in 10 years could destabilize and jeopardize the very existence of countries. It would pose a threat to global security. People tend to do what they must to survive. Changes cause new kind of conflicts. Water scarcity and flooding become major transboundary issues. Vanishing rivers or droughts pose a threat. The U.S. intelligence agencies consider the prospect of water shortage a threat alongside terrorism and WMDs. Access to water plays even only in the Arab-Israeli conflict. The world's water supply crisis is a serious one. Plan. The United States federal government should substantially curtail its domestic surveillance of computer software vulnerabilities or exploits unknown to relevant vendors. Solvency. The plan sells effective information sharing between the government and private sector of a signal clear commitment is key to cooperative cyber defense overcomes legal barriers or some develop. A significant fraction of the policy debate about cybersecurity and public-private partnerships revolves around the challenge of effectively sharing security information. Principal barriers to effective public-private partnership in combating cyber threats are limitations in government's ability to share information. The government is collecting this information using sources and methods that are classified and disclosure of the information risk compromising this. Incident disclosure conflicts with a new approved 9/11 standard of enhanced information sharing. Private sector actors want more for their federal partners to provide timely and actionable cyber threat and alert information. Private sector actors do not receive the security clearances required to adequately receive and act upon classified threat information. These problems are run as a policy, not likely to influence the laws, but of commitment. And curtailing 0 days disarm cyber attacks. Mass 14. The NSA buys 0-day exploits and makes the internet weaker as a result of it. You are not going to see the Chinese give up on 0 days just because we do. It's meaningless that no one expects the Chinese or the Russians or anyone else to give up 0 days. Closing 0 days is like disarming both sides because it's taking the vulnerability out of service. It's not about giving up our weapons, it's about building a better defense for the world, and yet the NSA isn't willing to do that. And it's closing vulnerabilities that must disarming the NSA. 0 days are key. Kill it all 14. The agency stockpiles knowledge about security holes that discovers it can exploit vulnerabilities to collect information or impact target devices with malware. Vulnerabilities as companies and users open to attack. Anyone who discovers or learns about the flaws in the potential market for information about vulnerabilities is out. 0-day exploits are coveted because it's harder to protect systems from an attack against weakness, giving up the capability to exploit and disclose vulnerabilities amounts to unilateral disarmament. When the NSA discovers vulnerabilities, it has a strong disincentive to disclose vulnerabilities to companies since the companies patch them. vulnerability stockpiles for its purposes rather than disclosing them to vendors so they can be fixed. Open for process.
Okay, so let's talk about your water security impact card. It indicates that water insecurity internationally leads to conflict. Why is U.S. water security key?
Because as soon as the U.S. doesn't have enough water, it'll start trying to take water from other countries, and it's going to lead to war because we're going to want them in
Your piece of evidence seems to indicate that the prospect of water shortages is a threat internationally. Why would the U.S. go in overseas for this?
Because it's like an empirical example of where like a water war has happened because of a lack of resources. This happens in other places, like exactly because of a lack of resources. So when there's a lack of resources,
Okay,
this is
so
that's
on
where
your
our warrants also indicate that like people want to get water, so this could push them
okay.
that way.
Your IP theft advantage talks about China and Russia. Who specifically would be doing the attacks that are implicated on your critical infrastructure advantage?
I mean,
Will they be terrorist organizations?
we specifically talk about Putin himself being willing to use nuclear weapons against other places, and also terrorist organizations. It leaves
I'm
an
wondering who
open
specifically
door.
would be hacking and using this cyber terrorism.
There's other countries because we're doing
So
surveillance on
you'd be
them.
serious,
They're
right?
mad at us, so they can go in. And then there's also because they're going in, then terrorists hear about it, and it leaves it.
Okay, so
wider
it would
opening
be
for them.
both state-based and territory-based.
Yes.
Okay, on the IP theft advantage, later in it you talk about how Russia's stealing information from us. Why do they get mad against us for exploiting our own system?
I'm
If
sorry.
they are stealing our military secrets, why does that make them mad at us?
Because they started taking our secrets after we started doing surveillance on them. It's a retaliation already.
Okay, so how does closing back doors end them being mad at us?
Well, no, actually, like the internal link or like chain of events is the fact that like because of the vulnerabilities, as our card said before, it says IP theft destroys military advantages, and like the link.
Why
there
would Russia
is-
get angry if we do not have a military advantage?
Well, no, what we're saying is like the fact that like we would be left vulnerable is a problem because as Chuck card says that like Russia is
Okay.
pushing against the United States now, which
So
causes the massive.
why would Russia aggress? What would be their motivation?
Because like as our card says they already, I mean like we're in like power conflict with each other, but as our card also says that Russia is like posturing and they're like aggressive and they said that they would use nuclear weapons if gone to that. So like
Okay, what piece of evidence do you have that indicates that the cyber attacks on military targets like drones are from 0 days and backdoors? You talk about how China's been able to hack into drones and things like that, and you also talk about how there's backdoors in U.S. companies. What's the internal link between these arguments?
Well, I mean, the military uses drones, so right there, China using drones.
Where do you
gives
have
them
evidence that
access to
indicates that it's 0 days that allows for the hacking of these drones?
Well, what we're saying is that the 0 days allow this entrance to the companies and to the drone, so it is the 0 days that
Okay, so are
allow
these
entrance.
state-based federal drones? State-based or federal drones, sorry, or are they
well,
private?
I mean just generally the card talks about like how 0 days.
I'm just wondering
different
why
presidents.
the government would have backdoors in their own military.
Or well, in other companies as well, like because like the military
So
is
why is
not
that
only
key to-
on what
why is that
provides
key to the
protection, but like companies that provide like military innovation as well exist.
Okay, 1 and 2 cent, it's 2 off and case in the order of,
Or of the one I see.
yeah, that. I'm gonna set up another table so we don't have to constantly adjust the height.
Yep.
Let me know when you have. Yep. Is everyone good?
Yes.
1 second.
Alright.
Alright.
First off is topicality, interpretation, domestic surveillance is information gathering on U.S. citizens, IT law making, 15, domestic surveillance, the acquisition of enough information concerning U.S. persons, violation eliminating 0 days, takes away surveillance of everyone who uses any that software, not just U.S. persons. Limits are necessary for negative preparation and clash in their interpretation, makes the topic too big, makes the domestic limit meaningless. All surveillance becomes topical by their standards. The affirmative is also extra topical because it reduces surveillance of anyone who uses U.S. technology, including foreign nationals. Expertise is separate voter because the affirmative could take any number of actions outside the resolution. We would never be able to predict this destroys all ground. Next off is the criticism. Their construction of a Russian threat to generate self-fulfilling binaries to create conflict eager, and 2K issue security issue 1 legitimize extraordinary measures to do operations or speech acts offensive, measures taking reference to perceived threat helps increase sense of insecurity, what is perceived as a threat might be secret, otherwise call for security, not eliminate threats of calls, for more insecurity will reproduce sense of speak security, then to avoid discourse of danger, reproduce the identity of state complaining. Russia with the USSR guessing everything Russian is a threat to a discourse of chain of equivalence to this binary opposition, reiterating lasting value. Russia is known by instability, invasion, chaos, unpredictability, imperialism, and identities for various discourse practices intensified by shifting onto a security mode, treating the opposition as if they were questioned of survival identities reproduced and critical infrastructure impact claims to reproduce securitization, even if cybersecurity threats are real, they prioritize market continuity and business interests, cementing neoliberal social relations. Capital Team 14. Cybersecurity is implemented in the special type security environment policy. Cybersecurity will alert by liberalization of management and infrastructure based on the logic of the market. Security society become impossible for government to achieve itself while taking private sector networks for the private sector business community. The ultimate goal crucial for performance of companies' protection loss of information needs to become reduced to the need to ensure the wealth of networks, not their own health machines, and not be isolated from human life. Becomes futile to separate the human from the technological scene. The political management and technical means reveals a deeply political nature and endangered entities or judge have legitimate claims to protection. The type of security can only provide relief to evaluate or object, not necessarily the citizen. Economic imperatives are decided the object to be protected or represented by the flow of information linked to the accumulation of capital. In water wars, rhetoric sanitizes and legitimizes violence and obscures its underlying causes. Try to hear 4. The main achievement of state powers within the persuasion of the population concerning legitimacy use violence confers to satisfy the murder execution would otherwise be the same act the targeting map of each and structured according to the hegemonic concept of water war. Discourse started growing in very severe definition of water development to become hegemonic or only legitimate violent conflicts believed that the wars between opposing states. Western hegemonic concepts concerning the state's role in society would scale the understanding of water conflicts with a limited range of options that appeared possible. They provide defenses limiting the issue definitions, and their fixation on national interest in apocalyptic scenarios justifies endless violence, totalitarianism, and nuclear war. Vote negative and intellectual criticism of their securitizing representation that's a prerequisite to policy analysis. Shapiro and Tunney and will blood on murders for be dark and weird fire ovals or novelty and handle our superiority be systematically logical and action. People believe better than the intelligent and willful. Denial comes at the moment is too less to the inferior with the reality of the image of nuclear weapons simultaneously heading towards record one where there's no longer a need from between offensive, defensive, nor any sense of war having to declare the dynamic. Takes them quality but inevitably dependent on actions are government does little to oppose occupation and maybe a Cyprus Western, Sahara, Lebanon, East, or more recent condemn aggression depending on whether it is U.S. interest, total war, forms of power, cruelty, and effortless violence, or attack to one nothing one person to deeper truth behind this area of war against unambiguously evil adversary with a single short bush who reflected attention for the society's harrowing problem straight out in 1984. The discourse taken for granted we should clarify policy by imaginatively putting ourselves in the shoes of strategists and nice freedom and democratic citizens who take positions which articulately concern insanity of the choices of the day at the time. As government to pursue this and of course we should not be determined that there is no chance of altering government's policy building a peace movement. My educated was not the fact that war is no solution to real democratic politics and means not leaving everything up to politicians. Case cyber security. Cyber attacks don't threaten the military. Lewis and 2 cyber attacks are often presented to threat to military force domination, placing the military force in a position where they depend on computer networks to limit the effectiveness of cyber weapons despite tens of thousands of network attackers in the DoD. No degradation of U.S. military capabilities in Europe contains Russian aggression, proves no impact. Vando. In 12 there will be no Red Army pouring our division to Europeans capable of handling such as the U.S. survival lines part of the Russian Empire, Soviet Union, and Moscow appears to have retrogressed to great power, great hero Russians. The Russians consider providing international respect and border security, and Russia and China can't cyber attack the U.S. They only use it to crack down on their own populations. Not ours, written quote. Russian China is started in cyber weapons. Russian China significant so both the fierce and eastern cyber wars and the code of weaponry is almost certainly overrated. Cybersecurity is a broader meaning than non-democracy. For them, the worst case scenario is not collapsing power plants. Russia and China are heading to the United States military, mostly into fighting cybersecurity. The fight against subversive behavior and meaningful attacks are infeasible. Clark and 12. Homeland security words are critical infrastructure may be exposed to risk and concludes there's a low risk of destruction critical infrastructure because complexity attack path the limited capability and outside adversaries develop cyber weaponry existence a multiple method mitigating cyber attacks. The zero-day exploits are incredibly difficult to find knowledge works both ways in cybersecurity. Techniques are also involved in once you know them to suppress the loss of weapons. Techniques are less useful yet the increased vulnerabilities are mitigated by increased detection and deterrent capability. Rate is also enhanced by increased awareness and smarter attacking demonstrated in 2009 identification structure. Malware, the public and private sector working together in the unprecedented effort to establish robust security guidelines. One and two grids advantage. No information sharing due to competition. J4 and 15 more important lack trust with the private sector, the inability of private actors to communicate with one another, their competitive reasons, and their impact evidence is ridiculous. The military did not launch all of its uses. The military base went offline to a power failure with no clear purpose. There's no internal link to the impact, and utilities are unhackable in the first place. Tangent and 10. It's always to turn off the lights because why doesn't it happen more often? It's easy. Your average is an analogous PC to complexity make exploit control and really much more difficult systems are rarely connected to the internet. And power grid is attacked twice a week anyway. There's no impact alpha in March 25th. The Great faces online attacks every 4 days from 2011 to 2014. The U.S. Department of Energy received 362 reports from electric utilities and cyber attacks. Go to solvency. They can't solve lack of trust within the private sector. Regulatory and competitive barriers prevented JFR, and 15, even more important, lack of trust with the private sector, the inability of private sector. 13. The National Security Agency broken privacy rules are overstepped legal authority 1,000 times each year. Infraction involved unauthorized surveillance of Americans and foreign intelligence targets in the United States. More severe serious losses include unauthorized access and intercepted communication, distribution, protecting content, the use of automated systems and safeguards to fight the order from the United States outside the rate of infraction increase, and the executive ignores Congress and fights and defers to abetics in court. 15. If Congress is enacting new restriction, the executive might ignore the law and continue unilaterally reviewing the executive conduct fail, fall to the fights and view this court, takes free right reference to the executive and executive orders, provides a need to circumvent the plan. Shaming 12. Government decision virtually allowing visibility to let review or oversight the presidential wasn't abundant light so that nothing seems out being clever arguments to changes in the executive power so that the president is not subject to legal regulation worked out by government ensuring zeal defies the limitation of moral surveillance by NSA laws they didn't follow through the secret based on flimsy legal opinions regarded so closely along to question the legal basis of operation deficient the illegal analysis and NSA for surveillance were activated after 9/11 the administration's process good hordes and Guantanamo executive branch warning was incompetent so sloppy one-sided and unpersuasive. Anything else? Cool. Process. I didn't read that first part on solvency because it was under the grids advantage.
First off, is the app, can the app exist in the world of the alternative?
I mean, it's not a floating pig. We would say the app isn't necessary in the world of the alternative.
Right. Your Bando 12 card that Europe contains Russian aggression, this was 3 years ago. How do you know that that's still true now?
Yeah, the argument's still, which flow is that on, sorry?
That is on the IP theft flow.
Oh, yeah. So that Bando card says that Russia is currently concerned not about the US, what they're doing, but rather about how the rest of the world views them as like a member of the international community. And about
this was
the
3 years ago. The view of Russia can change in 3 years.
I mean,
how
yes,
is this
but
Wasn't this like before
Putin's-
they like postured into
No,
like
so the thing
invading
is,
the Ukraine?
Putin's grand strategy has been pretty similar throughout his entirety of his regime. He's had the idea that Russia needs to be a secure place that, like, border security, like people
Alright,
coming in and
that's
trying
fine,
to attack
thank you.
them, not like.
That's fine.
don't
You
care
said that
what
our
the US does.
impact evidence is ridiculous on the critical infrastructure flow. Sorry, have there been resource wars in the past?
No, so the argument that we make is that the military isn't going to launch all their nukes just because, like.
Right. So even if they don't,
no, we're saying,
even
like,
if they don't launch all of their nukes, isn't a war still?
No, like, I'm trying to explain. So, because, like, say that your internal link is true, that an attack happens on a base, the power goes off. They're not going to launch all their nukes because the power goes off.
Okay.
That's the argument that we're making, is there's no, like,
So
massive overreach
the
just
global
because
war,
of a minor attack
the
on
major
base.
section of global
And
war is
in-
focusing on a
Yeah.
water resource war. So wouldn't a water resource war still be plausible?
I mean, I guess, but that's
All
where
right,
the
thank
Trotter
you.
evidence comes in on the K flow.
All right.
Like, the answer is elsewhere in the speech. Like, water
All right.
wars
That's
are
fine.
just
Thank you.
never good.
How exactly do water wars legitimize violence?
Okay, so framing water as something that is worth going to war over, or something that countries should
It's a
go to
resource war. So
I
if you
understand
can't survive
that.
without
No,
water,
No, I
can you?
understand that, but the 1AC frames this as something that must be done through competition and must be done through violence.
Alan, what way do we do that? If we just
Your
sit
impact
there-
scenario
if
is
we
lack
just
of
say,
water causes people to go to war.
But how does the affirmative frame it in this way if there's empirical examples of people like attacking? Like we're not like commodifying water and saying this, but we're saying
No, I'm
that
not.
this
I don't say you're commodifying water. I'm saying that the framing that the 1AC authors use structures water and like water availability as an issue of violence rather than.
We're not saying that it's good. We're saying that it's a likely
No,
outcome.
I never
So-
said that you say violence is good. I'm just saying that you justify further actions of violence. You don't have to say they're good. You can think they're bad, but they're going to happen in the world. Yeah.
Well,
Hold on, what's that?
I'm gonna go on case first, in the order of the way, easy, and then go topicality, and then, okay.
Sorry, hold on one second.
So yeah, those, I need that in criminal structures and LCC.
Oh, hold on, sorry. Give me like 60 seconds.
I'm most tired.
I mean, that's the other day.
It's his third, my fourth. We're both sleeping.
Case TK.
Sorry.
He gave me a 30 while he was on
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the order again?
So I'm gonna go, case in the order of the LCC, and then I'm going to do topicality.
Right. Cool.
Okay, current zero-day vulnerabilities in the code provides a vulnerability backdoor that exists within academic military operations. So first off, on case, they said that one, it doesn't threaten, but like all of our cards say that like the effective zero days is actually it threatens everybody because of like the vulnerabilities that occur within not only private companies but also companies that exist for military contracting. As they were asking us on cross-text about whether or not it matters, yes, it does, because while it may be within companies that are like Amazon or something like that, they are also within military companies, and as our Water 13 card said, it damages military operations because those vulnerabilities that are within backdoors in there. Also, another card that they were running says Europe contains Russian aggression. That's completely false. The card from 2 years ago. If Putin's border security was still the same, or how he believed that he cared about other people, or what other people think of him, he wouldn't have invaded the Ukraine, or he wouldn't have postured, he wouldn't have like loaded like military weapons up on the borders of like all of the Eastern Bloc countries in Eastern Europe. That would not have happened. Like, no, Europe cannot contain Russian aggression because Russia actually invaded a country that is part of the European Union. There's absolutely no way that Europe would be able to stop Russian aggression, and Russia and China can't cyber attack. That's just like completely something that's false. Like all of our evidence talks about how like cyber attacks are continuously happening on a broad scale across. That would be our Jaffa 15 and our Walker 15 card and our Bennett 15 card and our Lieutenant Hamilton card. Like, all of those talk about like, and have our ones provide us with like a reason or a explanation of the attacks that are happening right now. So now under credit infrastructure, they say that's not, or utilities on like power grade is unattackable. All of our talk about like how water supplies, while they may be vulnerable against it, and also they talk about like the way in which we frame water, but like we don't like frame it saying that like violence like will or can happen or will happen because of this, or that like we promote this sort of like violence by the way we frame water. We're saying that like people view water in this way, and because they view water in this way, this is something that's potentially detrimental when water runs out. And what they haven't actually refuted is the fact that like water actually can like run out, and that's where our evidence talks about, and how since that water runs out, that can lead to wars. So like we don't say that we don't say like, oh, like this is most likely going to happen. We're saying that like people react this way, and because of that, we need to solve for these vulnerabilities. And on solvency, They say that we can't solve within trust. However, private businesses want the government to cooperate, key to protect critical infrastructure, Tucker 14. The response from industry to cyber threats is outspaced that of government. Private businesses asking government to defend them from cyber attack. Vulnerabilities look point in comparison to exploitable security apps across the internet. With more infrastructure components that link together, current threats include economic transactions, power grid and air traffic control, expansion with self-driving cars, unmanned area vehicles, and building and infrastructure. Like what's going to, like as this course talking about, private businesses want this to cooperate. This cooperation will actually happen, like as all of our cards say. And also they say that circumvention is inevitable, but however, like circumvention isn't probable because it's not within that. Like once these vulnerabilities are disclosed to the companies, then they have the ability to patch them up, and that will be the final fix that occurs. So now on to T. Counterinterpretation, domestic surveillance of the acquisition of non-public information concerning United States persons. The plan meets because it curtails the acquisition of American companies, intellectual property, small 8. The acquisition of non-public information concerning United States persons. U.S. persons include corporations. IRS 15. United States persons. The term U.S. citizen person means a citizen or resident of the United States, a domestic partnership, a domestic corporation, any estate other than a foreign estate, any trust if the court within the United States is able to exercise primary supervision of the administration of trust, and one or more United States persons have the authority to control all of the substantial decisions in the trust. Any other person that is not a foreign person. And non-public information includes intellectual property. Correction 14. Non-public information is not possible to final categories of material information. However, information should be regarded as material when it's reasonable likelihood that it can be considered important to any investors making the investment decision regarding the purchase or sale of the company's securities. While it may be difficult under the standard to determine whether or not particular information is material, there are various categories of information that are particularly sensitive, and the general rule should always be considered material. Examples of such information include financial results known or announcement, future earnings or losses, execution or termination of significant contract with competitors, news of pending or proposed merger or other acquisition, news of disposition, construction or acquisition of other things, a patent or other intellectual property, milestones, and not being previously disclosed to any general public, otherwise not readily available to the general public, and software vulnerabilities infringe on intellectual property. Could vulnerabilities research impinge on intellectual property? And we meet disclosing 0 days curtails the NSA's ability to surveil rather than give us the data. The private sector exploits these flaws to spy on everyone. So pretty much like we totally meet because since the courts can exercise this ability over U.S. companies and U.S. companies that are making these military operations, that yes, this is something that occurs within the United States. It's not going outside of the United States. So now on to the K. The role of the balance is to endorse dynamic policymaking that recognizes the importance of what we say, how we say it, and the envisioning of the world that we'll look at if we advocate. The net benefit is this is to prevent tunnel vision and overemphasizing one of the methods such as discourse. This allows us to weigh our app with key to fairness. Alternative frameworks meet the one I see and make it impossible, and for app internal link turns the K's implications, hierarchies of domination, and they securitize the app, and that makes them link to their own K. Human life will be further devalued with the potential economic collapse and war until it encompasses both. The alt doesn't actually solve for securitization. Can it stop the news from talking about ISIS? And I can't prove complete solve. The thing they solve for one instance isn't enough because it makes their impacts inevitable through all or every other instance of securitization. They don't know what action has to be taken or what's going to happen after. The judge can't exactly say what the alt does or how. Then it's not a viable option to be voted on. And operationalize the app. If we're moving backwards in security, how do we make the problem worse? Evaluating using util encompasses all impacts. Isaac 2. Purity of intention does not ensure the achievement of what one intends in a personal real violence. Moral purity is completely in terms of politics. It's about unintended consequences and the effects rather than motives that is significant. Often the pursuit of good generates evil. And perm do both. It's a double bind. Either the alt solves all harms in the round and the perm solves because the rest can overcome the link, or the alt can't solve and proves no alt solvency, kicking the K. And even highly critical studies of security are open to articulating alternative visions of security. We can perm and do both to accentuate reconstruction of security. McDonald, Browning, 2011. Human security is ultimately better understood as problem solving and orientation as scholarship work which directly articulates a vision of the good regarding security falls outside some reasonableness. Some approaches appear reluctant to articulate even the notion of progress regarding security. Such a conception is evident in the expressed commitment to opening up space for communities to articulate alternative visions of security in the case of critical constructivism, or the commitment to resist the logic of security altogether. And only engaging the sake of possibly produce new security discourses moving forward. In traditional realism, there was a distinction between high and low politics because as the change is important, this becomes problematic for realism. The realist line to the line of defense will be in the most areas of politics. States are in the principal authorities. Who are the big players in relation to any big issue? Who are the people who have any kind of control? You cannot eliminate politics, to wish the state away, to wish politics away. It's not going to generate results. Politics is a permanent condition of human existence, and case outweighs in terms of K, loss of hegemony and change to civilization of the global order, causing infinitely more deaths, which escalates to an international nuclear arms. Critique will never access the impact, and even can be 1% risk of impact. If we have the alternative, it never happened in a world war, we are all dead. The average prior die, they have no link. Epistemology, the one I see as probability, but has probably not facts. We didn't endorse securitization. We don't advocate for the attack on others in order to settle the U.S., but rather attempt to restore trust. And dogmatic realism leads to universal truth, going and saying, 1. It is important to distinguish a dogmatic realist from a critical realist. Both believe that theories can be true or false, righteous, and research can progressively towards the true accounts of phenomena. Dogmatic realists believe the current theories correspond infallible scientific method can safely lift from the state of universal laws. And pragmatism is the best way to is to prescribe both good action, even despite a flawed epistemology. White 7. I reject outright that we need to commit ourselves to any particular epistemological position. This position does not mean that we are unable to make any uninformed judgments. Absolute certainty and absolute doubt are impossible positions to hold. To say that our concepts help carve up the world is not to accept that they determine the physicality of what exists or what can. In all cases, stop an object from existing. And we describe the world in certain ways, and those descriptions play a role in how we interact in the world. In order for any object to function as a table, it needs to have a set of opportunities such that can fulfill the role. The world itself simply cannot be discarded. And prove to the plan and the alternative in all other instances. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the impact debate. Starting with Russia and China. So, are they attacking right now?
Like in what manner? Because
Like,
our cards indicate
Are there cyber attacks being done by Russia and China right now?
Yeah, that's what the warrants of our cards said in the beginning.
Yes. So why hasn't the impact happened yet? Like if Russia and China are attacking now, your cards say that's bad because it causes X awful stuff. Why hasn't that X awful stuff happened yet?
Because as our cards from 2000, talks about how it's now and probability
No,
for the future. Like our cards have like been written within the past few months. So
No.
like,
0 days were just recently found out
Sure.
about, so
No,
these
so
other
I get-
countries started attacking recently. The attacks are building to the point where
No,
they
I guess my question is what's the brink for like the number of 0 days that have to occur, or like what's the time frame for when these attacks will occur? Because I just don't understand like logically how they're going to happen.
like, Lisa, would you like a tap round?
Sure.
Or, as our evidence indicates, like it's been ramping up, and our cards are like fairly recent. So it's saying that like this is ramping up to a point where it could provide a threat. It's also saying that like Russia, as of now, in the status quo, is being like aggressive and is posturing not only against like countries like in the EU, which are similar to the United States, but also invading parts of the EU.
That takes me to the question of water wars. In cross section 1NC, you say that water wars have happened in the past. You have empirical examples.
Yeah.
Why did those not end up with everyone dying?
Well, I mean, like any risk of a war still risks a lot of death.
Okay,
I mean,
so
like,
so sure, let's talk about that. You say pragmatism is good. How are we able to be pragmatic when we're worrying about any situation where there is a small risk of us?
But like you act as if like those water wars are like something that's insignificant. While they may not kill the entire population of the people.
I'm not talking about
involved.
significance now. Let's assume that you have the full magnitude. The question of probability. You make a pragmatism argument on the criticism. How are we able to take pragmatic action if we're constantly worrying about every different situation that could kill everyone?
Well, I mean, like, sure, like,
how is that
massive
enable?
350,000 ton bus falling out of the sky could kill everyone, right?
Yes,
but like,
and
but the difference with these is like,
chances.
like, what we're talking about is that like there's actually a risk of this happening. You're like, oh, like any extinction, like this is just like extrapolating.
Sure.
Like, Lars actually talks about like how this
What do you mean by
and the probability of this.
What do you mean by actually a risk of this happening?
I mean, like,
what's the problem?
I mean, like our card,
The water wars?
our cards. Well, I mean, the probability of a water war happens in like as empirically as it says in like countries that like had a lack of water at a certain period of time and then have ended up like badly. But if we talk about like what's actually a threat, it's something that provides like a legitimate harm to like citizens
I'm not
of
sure
any
how
place, right?
How pragmatism like allows us to focus on things that have a really low risk of happening.
I mean, if you look at
But like you can say they have
Like,
really
if we're
close your
pragmatic,
habit,
we're
you
going
haven't
to-
said
that's
on
Okay, 3 minutes, we'll start that.
So what was the other one other than school we could connect to?
The SDUHSD or the guest one.
Yeah.
They all take the same username and password.
Which is Winter Classic, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
4:15 for 10.
Stop 10 seconds ago at 4:20. And I didn't even need this extra 10 seconds. I was over this time. Awesome. Perfect. Lost opportunities. Yep. Okay, the order is going to be IP theft, then critical infrastructure, then a critique. We'll get it.
Oh.
All get impacts. Is anyone not ready? First off, extender a piece of Lewis 12 evidence. They say that it's specific to military technology companies, but this does not affect the drones in the 1AC, which means that there's no spillover to military readiness. And the warrants evidence says that attacks on the DoD are not affected. It should be the same feasibility as an attack on a technology company. There's no real distinction coming up to the 2AC. Extend the bando evidence. The Europe should be able to contain it. The reason why this is different than Ukraine is Ukraine is outside or inside the EU. We are part of NATO, which means that Europe would more likely come to our defense, which would contain Russia. If they are right about Russia, the realism should be the international sphere, then Russia would not want to act against their own self-interest. The grid evidence also indicates that they would not, Russia and China would not have a large-scale attack, and they would not be very feasible. That's Clark, on to critical infrastructure. Extend the piece of Kanji evidence that utilities are unhackable. There was no answer to this. These are pretty safe. These are pretty safe parts of the critical infrastructure. There's no spillover. Also, they can see the top evidence that attack twice a week. There should be no spillover to a larger impact on security critique. There are 3 easy negative outlets, no new one-error answers. We control the root cause. The end creation creates endless, repeatable cycle because of violence. Cause approximate causes meaning nothing, since the underlying system will inevitably recreate their harms. And second, we can see the value of just as the quest of security justifies the aggressive population, the commodities, and totalitarian control. 3 reason without ways. That devaluation makes a reasonable war inevitable in terms of an escalation war and individual extinction is inevitable. And so they're only impact if there's no value perpetuating life means nothing. And third, their authors are substitute. They're so-called expert regurgitating military factoids to grab headlines 24-hour news cycle. Policy focus on incarcerates the confines of the government, it seems deemed comparable, and barring life analysis and terminal defensive affirmative. That's all Shapiro. Also, they have no defense of their representations or their specific answers to the links coming out of the 1AC, which means that they're all independent case turns to the 1AC. Additionally, the role of academics is to interrogate cycles of immigration. Fiat is illusory, which causes the question of what they're doing in this room. If we will win, the reorientation of academic space is one to question assumptions of foreign policy and enable violence in the status quo. And prefer our specificity on the root cause claims. Their authors are trapped in a burner fantasy that's possible to create stability. This is one instance or evidence that speaks on underlying neurological basis of those claims, and our root cause arguments are good and productive. All right, level 7. For critics of such issues, cause the weakens the clarity of the defeat of terrorism, the arguments of logically flawed, the dangerous outrage, to divert the understanding the motives of terrorism, ignores the to mandatory misunderstanding the understanding of terrorism, having the understanding of terrorism, conceiving terrorism, the society obliges us to understand society, the concept of critical to understanding of terrorism as a whole, on framework, and they get to weigh their affirmative, The affirmative must justify the framing for weighing the cases. The critical intellectual development must be to reward better scholarship that's logically prior. Blecher 2K. The representation an essential part of the political process. The political only comes to reality and after do the representation before and able to come to another question to deal with the representation and the structure that seeks to represent. And if we in framework, we don't need an alternative. The student turns the NF paper, the teacher shouldn't have to write a letter. The better paper to conclude was bad and fosters activism. The Shapiro is conceptualizing solutions, external agency formulation of peace and movement building at the top and flips their real world arguments and best fit. Most debaters won't be policymakers. The framework arguments utilize the cyber resistance in the case of fiat, illusionary change with priorities are impacting key education. We already know about policy. It's not critical education. Marginalized small schools who don't keep up with research big school with the critique and increases policy education. Blindingly accepting experts and own our arguments officials breathe ignorance and deeper education and they get to their affirmative problematize the very notion the affirmative is a good idea. We not just say the normative policy record and think of the alternative as a different explaining of the affirmative and the choose of the policy is bad. And they say that the curve doesn't solve it. We do not need it if we want affirmation. Also, all of our epistemology arguments from the overview indicate that you should prioritize epistemological reorientation. Policy making does not matter. They should have to justify this epistemology first. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't create alternative real world changes. This is the only instance of policy that is being debated about out at the moment. They say utilitarianism, but the huge security effects of the 1AC serves as a misdirection of epic scale that distracts us from the real structural inequality comparatively outweigh the case. Jackson 12. Most of what you've been told about because the one big con and the distract is really hurting poverty, inequality, structural violence, the media has been most of the time targeting the terrorism, Iran, North Korea hackers, and China has been the state of vast money security, virtually no impact on actual risk of dying rulers, or hopefully when they notice the inequality and domestic violence and poverty and preventable, and tens of millions of people in needlessly they've noticed the trillions of dollars spent on which make us less safe and national security considering the epic scale, the distraction of inequalities of which those are the real humans that permanently afraid to keep you under control. Also, we are utilitarian. We turn all of their impacts conceded out of the 1C on to the permutation debate. They concede all of the things coming out of the 1C, which means you should not give them much justification. Just search documents. And the perms of the reps makes it an affirmative target steals negative ground, rejecting multiple perms of you lose us. Excuse the blockers of minutum, quick blips, the ability to change the affirmative, and make the all distinct from no arguments and no net benefit running 100% alternative solidly assuming affirmative predictions to reject the rebuttal extrapolations of the affirmative textually and functionally impossible. You can't reject something and then do it makes it disingenuous and guarantees co-option. And the alternative is a sequencing question. The alternative is a sequential policy process and the downwards being spilled before the policy action and invite realism to co-opt the alternative. Also, they concede all the ruling scenarios mean that it shouldn't be able to solve regardless. Extend the first piece of Jaeger evidence that generates a self-equivalent binaries of conflict. Russia does not want to attack us in this status quo, but when we view them as always in competition with ourselves, it justifies politics that demonize Russia and lead to things like the Cold War policies that actually escalated violence with Russia. There's no specific defense of the representations of Russia, which means that we should be able to comment on this. Also, the casualty link, the critical infrastructure, the necessary security, because we rely on experts that use technical terms and just to mystify the populations, justifying more securitization to protect the liberal economy of capitalism. No answer to this. Also, decreased security. Also, they have no defense of the representations of water wars. Water wars obscure the underlying causes of conflict and their ideological vision. Hegemonic concept to serve the interests of powerful social actors, dominating interests of groups. Their claims of vision. They were mindfully repeated down by the program to proliferate. Trottier, 2004. The fundamental element of state persuasion, the difference of hegemony in the persuading and subordinated groups and accept their values of their ideas very much ideological nature. They allows for the population to accept the state's power to legitimate ideological hegemonic by stabilizing the distortion rationales of complex realities. The real idea that we should have water where is needed has led to the emergent hegemonic concept of the water development applies in the face of the right time for water clear hierarchy of values and concerning the water development is can signify power and concerning companies the obvious candidates that grew the version of water development they clearly participated in the maintaining of this belief. Also the term double mind doesn't solve because this is the only instance. Doesn't matter if we can solve all instances of securitization, we can solve the instance of the affirmative that's completely conceded. They say that McDonald evidence, but they can't incorporate alternative visions if we still win our link scenarios. Engaging in the state is not key. We have a prior question of epistemology that was conceded. Also, they say case outweighs, but the 1% risk method is bad and justifies some intervention that was higher up on the flow. They say they don't endorse security, but all of the links are proof that they do, and they still represent security regardless of if they agree with the representations they said them. They can't no link out of this. They say realism is the truth, but they are not realists. Russia there would be no reason reason for Russia to be aggressive internationally, which means that you should reject them in their own frame. Also, realism is bad because it can't explain with the flashpoint events and deviance and non-state actors. It means you understand huge geopolitical events like the fall of Soviet Union, 9/11, Arab Spring, the Bolshevik Revolution, Haitian Revolution, American Revolution, the UN, international treaties, and democracies. And although my state answers higher above respond to their pragmatism arguments and. Finally, permutation, all evidence is intrinsic, is discipline is clear, colorful alternatives and counterland impossible, and if you add out of the evidence that returns, plan focus, and just because everyone is jumping off the bridge doesn't mean you should. If we win, premise of decay, and then use it backfires.
Okay, so you said that the U.S. is any different from the Ukraine. How, like?
Okay, so the warrants that I gave is since we are a member of NATO, the EU would more likely try to stop Russian aggression internationally because we have strong ties to the rest of the EU.
Okay, but isn't like the Ukraine a part of the EU?
Okay. I don't
So-
think it is.
But even if it's like, okay, well, but like, why if they were not willing to help or assist with somebody who is so close to like home, why would they be willing to risk like their security, I guess, for protecting the United States?
Ukraine is geographically closer, but we are politically closer with NATO and the rest of the EU.
Yeah, but wouldn't like that geographic posturing provide more of a threat because it's closer to the borders of them in like actuality?
I mean, possibly. I would still think that the securitization of the EU is bad.
Okay, so even if you win, like root cause, how do you solve for the affirmative? Because if you can win, like, if your argument is that we
I have several
securitize.
arguments in the 2NC. One is that the epistemological interrogation of the affirmative is a prior question to the implementation of the policy. Your representations of security are innately bad. Also, we believe that just by analyzing this, we can inform better policies in the future, and your affirmative leads to zero policy failure.
Okay, but like, even like, okay, so I get that, but like, even if you win that, like, we securitize and that may have caused the problems, how does it solve for the Russian posturing or like any of this like aggression that occurs now? Like, because if Russian aggression exists now, which our evidence says, then how does yours solve
We
for
think that
that?
the reason for that Russian aggression is the securitizing representations. Our 1NC evidence indicates that by putting not the representations of the affirmative, the securitizing policies against Russia are what is allowing for the aggression. Because when we always are viewed in competition with them, they are more likely to try to make mistakes that are caused Russian aggression.
Okay, so, and also, I think you said like U.S. in competition, but like, how do we not present Russia as a significant threat? Because why we may like provide like things that say, but like the actions, how are the actions? What I'm trying to get is how is the actions of Russia themselves not posing it as like a legitimate threat? Because like if they're posturing and threatening like nuclear aggression in a sense, then how is that not an actual threat?
Okay, so that's part of the last question I gave. I think the reason why Russia is a serious threat is because of the history of securitizing politics against Russia.
Okay, but like regards of the past, how does eliminating now stop the already aggressive nature of Russia?
Okay, so wait, can you?
Like, so I'm saying, like, if Russia is aggressive at the moment, then what's to stop, like what's to, okay.
When are sent, it's going to be T with an overview and then solvency.
Oh, you said T solvency?
Yeah, there's an overview on T. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, what word?
T with an overview and then solvency.
Okay.
Speech one or
One. Let me know when you're good.
Okay.
Framing the debate in terms of competing interpretations, if we win our interpretation, the better model for the debate, and their violation kills our education and strategy for in-round, you should vote negative. Of course, this is kind of pointless because their counter-interpretation was our interpretation. Domestic surveillance is the acquisition of non-public information on U.S. persons. That's the IT law with the evidence we want to see. The act doesn't need it because they decrease surveillance of all U.S. tech that has 0 days. That includes information on non-U.S. persons. You should prefer our interpretation because we have a clear guideline as to what is or is not domestic surveillance. Our interpretation allows for far too many ridiculous applicable law for countries, companies around the world to be considered domestic surveillance limits or heed to effective debate because A, only by setting the bounds on the topic can we actually debate it, and B, allowing other apps to explode background makes the research burden on the negative unbearable, and C, limits have to be a voter without limits. We lose out on portable skills like strategy and education because we're spread way too thin and don't get any in-depth analysis. We still offer plenty of good affirmatives, just campus, prisons, metadata, backdoor, strict scrutiny, Islamophobia, or even this app, if altered properly, this still allows for a breadth of educational mechanisms, or at least each branch of the government and a wide variety of advantage ground from the economy to structural balance, so hegemony to the environment, now go to the line by line. They say their counter-interpretation, but their interpretation is the same as ours. The IT law wiki evidence says the same thing. They still don't mean it. I got to that above and I'll repeat it again later. They say U.S. persons includes corporations. That explodes limits because there's so many goddamn corporations. They're literally everywhere, not just in the U.S. They say it also includes intellectual property. That doesn't matter because the corporation question vastly under limits. Independently, there's an incredibly vast literature based on IP rights, but we had that discussion on the economic engagement topic I read. I debated McClatchy 702 app so many times I don't need to debate this all again. Their interpretation vastly unlimits the topic and explodes background while making negative research burden way too great. Under their interpretation, we have to prepare for a ridiculous number of affirmatives. What I have to win is what each literature base. They open up any affirmative about U.S. companies in foreign countries. Spoiler alert, there's so many of them we never be able to prepare. Also apps about workers and plants of U.S. companies offshore. There's a massive literature base on worker exploitation outside of the United States, but we already had that debate on different topics and we're not prepared for it on this topic given we're talking about surveillance. Now they say we mean, but one, they are just U.S. persons. The Plant Act refers to software available to any number of people, not just the ones who are U.S. persons. And two, they don't meet their own interpretation. The IRS evidence indicates that U.S. persons includes quote to any other person who's not a foreign person, even if they do make the still extra topical, which is conceded out of the two ways. Surveillance of foreign agents is not domestic surveillance, even if it is in the U.S. McCarthy and 6. A call is not considered domestic just because one party of it happens to be inside the U.S. The NSA drops other international non-domestic. The Supreme Court made it explicit in the Keith case of court, including investigations of threats posed by foreign organizations to the agents operating both within and without the U.S. The wiretapping, it doesn't set the U.S. territories foreign intelligence collection, not domestic surveillance. The literature based on surveillance of U.S. persons is big enough already. Plenty of people write about the privacy violations, racism, sexism, and stuff that occurs about surveillance of U.S. citizens. The literature based on surveillance of non-U.S. persons is equally large, from the pointless logs of tourists and natural monuments to in-depth research conducted on surveillance of visiting diplomats or other persons of interest. The A subpoint is the in-depth class because we can't predict the base action of the plan. We never get to the minutiae. There may be some great hybrid-specific data sets, but there's no way we can find out about them in a topic, or we have to worry about curtailing any form of surveillance. So any net benefit to a specific issue when surveillance is rendered null by the sheer number of issues. B subpoint is advocacy skills because without in-depth clash over all aspects of the app, you never learn how to truly defend your proposals. There's a crucial out-of-round impact. So one of the most important things we learn in debate is how to present our arguments and defend them without the app having to fully defend their action. If you're losing out on these portable skills in the worst case scenario, you can vote negative on presumption because we never get the chance to prove that the app is actually a good idea in the first place. It's never have to defend it. There's no reasonability or predictability argument means you default to competing interpretations. I impacted mine now way better than they will. Solved. 2AC is way too bloated. It doesn't matter if private companies want the U.S. to curtail surveillance. They'd also like more tax cuts and no regulation, but that's not how politics works. They concede to bring solid warrants for circumvention first, and the government evidence. The NSA won't listen and oversteps, quote, unauthorized access to intercepted communications. There's also oversight. Even when it was quadrupled, didn't stop an increased number of violations by the NSA. Second is the Bendix and Court Evidence Executive makes surveillance policy unilaterally. It ignores Congress, and then FISA justifies it because the court allows them to circumvent Congress and set the precedent that this is legal. Also, the exchange evidence is really good because sloppily written laws combined with good laws will always justify new forms of surveillance and continue. There's no solvency because U.S. domain doesn't drive global zero-day use relevant. And all 14 is interesting part of where the policy of immediately reporting vulnerabilities could disrupt the zero-day interests of U.S. law enforcement, unlikely to have a major impact on the zero-day markets and international market dominated by national security organizations. And vulnerabilities are inevitable due to things like orphans, bill and open. And all 14 all software is actively maintained maybe orphan software without an active vendor owner report standard communication protocols occasionally find out vulnerabilities, and they can't solve info sharing because there's legal barriers. BG and 13 Congress to remove barriers for voluntary private sector sharing, legal ambiguity, impede greater collaboration and sharing information. In fact, they share data about an attacker, even complete breach in the authority number of legally blocked and all allegations lead to conflict litigation settlements regardless of validity of information to a regulated damage voluntary for instance organization bureau backlash from regulators. And the plan doesn't solve basic NSA surveillance topics, corporate trust impossible to kill at all. And 14 actually the NSA created a series of trust and credibility problem. All this denying and lying results in not trusting the NSA or companies. The NSA's efforts to undermine trust and security. The internet itself, the loss of trust and opportunity affecting the behavior of internet users. uses worldwide and reforms are not possible. The claim will be circumvented this turns against Greenwald. The 14 governments don't limit the own power of the entire citizen in DC designed to prevent actual reform. The fact the U.S. intelligence community national security state operates null and service can easily co-opt the entire reform process.
Mark, process. I can send you marks too.
So here, 310.
Yeah.
Stop her. Hold on. Can I flash it to you? Can I just share it, or you can just share it?
Of course.
I mean, either way.
Flashing time.
Alright.
Do you have other cards? Flash that out if you want.
Oh, apparently. Alright, here we go.
250 pounds. Cool.
Alright, so the order will be case in the order of critical infrastructure, IP theft, solvency,
Hold on a
and
second.
then T and the K.
Okay, cool.
Let's go. You want the 1 hour cards?
Yeah.
Let me actually open it.
Is anybody not ready?
Okay.
Wait, can you repeat the order?
Case in the order of critical infrastructure, IP, then solvency, and then T and the K.
Cool. For some reason, the solvency flow I wrote your 1 hour is crazy. I had it 2AC, but I still need to be less 2AC. And I do give that speed. That's true.
Alright.
Right, is anybody not ready? Alright, starting on the critical infrastructure flow, we admit that, or we concede that, there's no, possibility of the utilities being hacked, so, kick that. And then moving on to IP theft. First of all, on the drones are a form of military contracting. The companies that are being attacked through the 0 days, some of them are military contracting, as Michael said in the 2AC. And so, if the companies are being hacked into, including military contracting, then this is going to affect the military directly, especially if the drone companies are being, because they are part of what provides the military with drones. So it is turning right there. Also, they say that Europe is containing Russian aggression. Yet again, this is a card from 2012. A lot can change in 3 years, especially with how the whether or not Europe is containing Russian aggression. So they claim that Europe is part of NATO, and so they're going to help protect us. But it's not meaning that Europe is containing Russian aggression. It's just saying that, hey, Europe's part of NATO, that's fantastic. That doesn't mean that Europe isn't going to attack us instead. And then, so they also said that there's no large-scale attack, and that there hasn't been one yet. However, 0-day information has just recently been starting to come out. Most countries, nobody really knew about it until recently. Like Russia, China, and also different terrorist groups have started just attacking into America recently. It's going to escalate. This is just the start of it. Also, they never even touched the idea that terrorists are going to be hacking in, and that they can be taking the military information that the terrorists can attack us. So, moving on to solvency, they said that we can see circumvention. However, part of the plan is that the NSA and the government will disclose to the companies that are being hacked into about it. So the companies are going to be able to fix the 0 days. So even if they circumvent this idea to other parts of the government, it's not going to be possible because the 0 days will have been closed and there is no more opportunity for the government to hack into the company. Also, they said that we have no solvency over, our solvency is that without the 0 days there will be no more hacking, and that there will be moving on. Actually, going back to the IP theft flow really quick, war with Russia is likely and devastating. Nicholas 15. Russia not only considers nuclear war in a scenario which begins to lose its superior force. They threaten its nuclear during conflict or in return of opponent. Imagine Putin decides to test the NATO can be broken with the show force. Troops with better training and superior weapons. Russia realize that they face the prospect of defeat. They nuclear counter-offensive. Keys to strategic nuclear exchange or original military planning, political misperception, national human frailty. If they decide to launch a nuclear strike, Western strategic forces are full of ready to strike the Russian nuclear infrastructure. Once nuclear explodes, hardliners will demand a strike. United States will attack, and Russia will attack each other's nuclear capability in mid-CKS. Several hundred nuclear weapons fall in each country, providing the immediate destruction of Washington. Any of this is not impossible. And Russian nuclear militarization now in 315. The 1999 nuclear doctrine revised to reserve Russia use of force against its disposal, West needs to repel an armed aggression. Putin's doctrine allowed for use of nuclear weapons as a deterrent to smaller scale of war that do not necessarily threaten Russian existence. Putin's unequivocally declared to the West hostile Putin promised to modernize and update it. Putin's taken steps to build a nuclear arsenal. Declared the U.S. Department of State declared Russia violates of obligations in the NFS treaty and possess, produce, or flight a test launch cruise missile. Russia threatened to withdraw treaty. Putin issued direct challenges. This is reality declared that Russia is working on generation nuclear conventional weapons. And moving on to the T-flow. They said that we have the same definition of non-public. However, our part of the non-public definition includes info that is not released, that is not disclosed to the public. Non-public is not disclosed to the public. For our definition, because without it, it's too limited. We need to. This isn't even that limited of a debate. If we follow their definitions, it takes away our flexibility. And so, moving on to the K. If their pragmatism or response are also a reason for you to judge vote negative, because are also a reason for you to judge to vote negative, because that would work if we were here talking about massive busts falling out of the sky and destroying the earth. However, you're talking about legitimate threat of Russia posturing, which they have not answered. They say that destruction some structural inequalities. However, the real world risk that we have encompasses all races and genders, puts people on the same scale where all lives matter and as the same as all others. Util is not discriminatory at all. The fact is that the only thing that keeps others on equal is that it is the only thing that keeps others on equal playing field. Pragmatism is a good thing. We need to have a pragmatic thinking so that we can actually prevent realistically what's going to happen. And the root cause does not mean reverse causality. They were unable to explain on cross how they were able to solve for Russian aggression at the moment. No matter that securitization has caused the problems that exist within the 1AC. The 1AC is only the can solve for the triad impacts that they have lost. It's also a reason you should judge vote on the permutation.
going to be the K than T.
No cards, right?
No.
Well, so Alright.
Anyone not ready?
This is going to be a pretty easy negative ballot on the topicality flow, but I will handle a few arguments on the security K. Extended permutation, we're not going for it. They didn't have any theory arguments in U1AR. Do not justify anything to weigh against topicality. They did not extend the role of the ballot. If anything, they extend the framework arguments. It helps us on topicality. In-depth analysis on policy means that limits are good on the topicality. They can see that you default to competing interpretations, and since the only argument coming out of the 1AR was an extension of their interpretation that was practically the same as ours, means that you're going to vote negative on this interpretation. They have no defense against the domestic part of our interpretation. We both agree that surveillance is an acquisition of information, non-public information on persons, but we disagree on the domestic part. They do not have any we meet arguments out of the 1AR. They do not meet our interpretation because they their affirmative allows for surveillance on non-US persons, because these corporations include data that are not specifically located just for US persons. Even if corporations are an example of US persons, they also have people or also people. There will always be foreign people, and that is included in their definition, completely conceded. That links into all of our arguments. They don't extend anything else under the 1AR, do not let them justify that. I'm going to extend that you have to limit it to just US persons. Their IRS definition does not indicate the foreign versus domestic binary, so it is not going to be able to answer our interpretation. They completely concede that this leads to extra topicality, and that is an independent voter, regardless of the rest of the debate, that explodes limits. They have conceded that limits is what you should view primarily in this debate. We have two subpoints under limits. The first is clash, that this is unnecessary to base action. They concede that this means that you can vote negative on presumption, because if we are not able to test the affirmative and have in-depth clash on it, then they cannot meet their burden of proof of proving the affirmative is right. Also, they concede advocacy skills. We have to force them to defend a topical action, which will lead to in-depth analysis.
What if we don't get to test them? Means they never actually defend the app.
Yeah, if we never are able to test them, they don't have to defend their app. This is crucial on our own impact, because the most important thing we learn in debate is how to present arguments and defend them. With the app, they have to fully defend that everything loses on portable skills. They completely concede our case list coming out of the 1AR. Teddy did a good job here, so I'm not going to need to explain it too in depth. They have no case list coming out of the 1AR. We still allow for plenty of apps in the 1AR that we indicate that metadata, prisons, strict scrutiny, and all of these other specific court apps are fine as long as they limit it down to US persons. They can't garner any offense off of topicality. Don't think there's anything else to say. No under limiting disads, there's no extension in the 1AR. Limits are what you should be prioritizing. That was impacted out in the 1AR. No impact out of the 1AR. No possible offensive argument. Even if prefer interpretation to small, because even if it is non-public information, the small evidence also indicates US persons. That they don't meet their own definition, and that was the only argument in the 1AR. I don't, yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, so first thing on case, they dropped all the cards that my partner read in their 1AR, which said that like Russia is actually a threat. So like we win that Russia is actually a threat, that they're posturing against us, and that actually has a risk of nuclear war since they dropped all those cards, and plus like they didn't really answer like any of the cards that we read on IP theft, saying that it happened, saying that like IP theft was a legitimate threat. Then you should extend those impacts also. Answering their Europe contains aggression, it hasn't really been answered. What they didn't really get at in cross-ex, or what I was trying to flesh out in cross-ex, is like, since Europe didn't actually like protect a country that's part of its like own EU or system of things, like why would it have any reason to protect the United States as a whole, or why would Europe have like any incentive to be able to protect the United States? But also, if they weren't able to protect somebody who's part of their own like system of countries, or that's so close to their borders against Russian aggression, then what makes you think that like they'd actually be able to help the U.S. against Russian aggression? This is completely the process. They haven't been able to do it, and their card's really old as well. That's well before the Ukraine attack actually happened, which means that like, one, you can't really account for that, and there are new forms of aggression and posturing, which all state in our evidence, which is a lot newer than theirs, so you should actually view Russia as a threat. In addition, so let's just move on to T right now. They say that like we contain a lot of data that's outside the United States, but like they ignore like our cards, which say that like U.S. persons include corporations. Ours are talking about one, as our interpretation says, that it's U.S. companies run by U.S. persons under the jurisdiction of the United States of America, courts of the United States of America, and the government of the United States of America. I don't know how much more USA they want. Like, unless they want us to, like, I don't know, like, tape an American flag to all the companies and, like, make sure that it's domestic and within inside the United States. No, like, this is something that exists. What we're talking about is software vulnerabilities that exist within United States companies by United States innovation. That's what ours talks about, and how extend our actions to protect U.S. persons include corporations. And like as it says, U.S. persons include corporations, domestic partnerships, all this sort of things. This occurs within the United States. If this surveillance occurs within the United States, then it is something that is domestic. It's completely ridiculous that they assume that like that's not. It's run by U.S. people under U.S. jurisdiction by all of that. Like they're saying that like we explode limits. Actually, like ours is very extremely domestic. As our topicality says, we meet. I don't know how much more like we could have proven that like our surveillance occurs within the United States. Now, on to framing as part of the K. As we said, like what they say is that like the way in which we view pragmatism is not something that is legitimate. However, like what we've already proven is that Russia is actually a threat. Like our pragmatism is like, sure, their arguments against pragmatism will be completely legitimate if they were arguing about like that we were saying something that's completely crazy. Like I don't know, like as I mentioned, like maybe like a nuke just going off, blowing up the entirety of the United States, the entire world. But like Russia is posturing, they threatened us as the warrants in our cards say, and this is happening. Like we are like pragmatically evaluating a threat that is very, very relevant and something that they have not argued. You should be viewing Russia as a threat, and you should also be extending our impact of Russian IP threat as well. In addition, like prefer utilitarianism. It's the only thing that has everybody in equal plane. Like values all lives, because like what we're saying is that like we need to protect all lives against a large amount of threat that occurs, and our threat is something that does occur because they haven't actually done it. And this is also a reason why you should vote on the permutation, because just because they've argued root cause does not mean that they have the ability to solve for this. Just because securitization may have caused the problems of the 1AC, that does not mean that because we start changing our mindset about securitization, that the Russian posturing will just go away. And the Russian posturing is something that occurs right now as we've won. This is something that I'm going to keep searching just because we've won that Russian posturing occurs, and that it is a danger. And because we've won that, and because we've won this like try to impact, or like the fact that Russia's posturing and that they are very likely to use a nuclear weapon, you also are voting on the permutation, because since we've won a risk of that, then there's a very real risk of extinction. And this extinction means that like we actually can't solve for securitization because everybody's dead, so who will care whether or not we're like painting ourselves in competition with Russia when everybody's just a pile of ashes. We've won this try or die impact, which means the only way to solve this permutation, we have to do the plan first, because there is a risk of Russian posturing and aggression and nuclear war, as all of our evidence states. And then do the alternative. We can change the alternative. That's something that has existed and we can actually change. However, like after we're all dead, we actually can't solve anything. So since we've won that Russian aggression happens, and that we are topical because we gave so many examples of like how we are topical, and we read a lot of different cards and about like how U.S. companies are part of that, and then how like they've dropped the Russia impact, and the only way you're solving is permutation. So like the app is the only way to solve all of this.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I just got a call. This is Scott Wheeler.
Parents are kind of out.
Oh, really? Wait, how do you?
Well, so
Oh, hi.
if you look at like
Yeah.
parents for one and then click on your team code, it'll tell you who you're being at too. It says it under the results section. Which means,
Wow, how did you find that?
which means Taverns for me.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and he had said he can't go. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you drive like an hour?
Well,
8 or
Uh-huh.
9.
you drove last night.
Yeah, it was like a 2-day. What's the? Actually, I don't know what we're saying. Do you have any other stuff?
Yeah, I have no idea what we're saying. We'll see. I was staying in the same place as well. And hanging out with
Are you all staying until the pizza?
Maybe.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me
Jeremiah won't be
schedule
there,
it
but
now.
Jeremiah goes to college.
It
now.
starts
Oh, yeah?
yeah, it starts
Yeah,
at
yeah.
yeah.
He goes to USD, right?
It does start at
UCSD,
12.
yeah.
Let me let me talk to you in a little bit because I can't really talk right now.
How'd y'all meet you? Just like generally.
Years.
It's for
How many people know you?
Liam, that's a lot of people.
Actually, the first time I saw him, it was with Jeremiah around the first outround here my freshman year against Quintet. We got whacked.
During my sophomore year, he got pulled up to debate me and Chris. And then pulled up
I
again.
really did sophomore year with Josh.
And then again to debate around Jerry. So that. But then they lost.
Didn't we have
Yeah. Let me give you a call back in a little bit. Yeah.
They were like homies and watching finals. And then we took it, take their food. It's like we gave her 1 hour.
Yeah, in the final round of this tournament his sophomore year.
Okay. Let me I'll talk to you I'll talk to you about this again like either tonight or the next day or two. I can't really talk right now, but I'll have to see check with her like which gets confirmed and what's and then I'll think about whether that might work or not. But I'll talk to you soon about it.
What year?
Yeah.
What year were you?
We're sophomores.
Yeah, I know Palos Verdes SL.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I really know.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I understand. Okay.
No, it's for
I was like, that was so long.
Yeah, I understand.
No.
I understand.
Okay.
All right, talk to you later. All right. Thank you. Bye.
It's under this section.
Wait, just run some crazy. Breaking news has terrible disclosure area video crap.
Oh, okay. You know what?
Wiki this.
At least their analysis have a. Yeah, the Palace right now.
They do?
Yeah, they're 0 days. I beat that.
Oh, they're also 0 days?
Yeah,
That's what I see.
we have 2 apps in here, so we're not sure which advantages, but it's econ, hedge, cyber defense, and grids, some of those. Some ones
Yeah, I think
you
you
want to
might
see.
need a wiki, because I saw right now it says drones on there.
Have you ever hit them? Palos Verdes SL?
I do not believe we have.
No.
They're running drones. They're running drones?
Yeah, let's talk to Joey and
Oh god, they're running drones.
Those things are cool.
I like the drones because
Drones are cool.
drones are cool. I agree.
I think our security cabins are really cool.
No, yeah. Message from Devin Priest and what it's gonna get us killed.
What?
Oh, yeah, he's doing participate right now. No, he's not anymore.
Really?
I think that's over.
No, but that was today. So we were going to be judging that, yeah.
That is right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for that. I saw that.
This is the same. Did you watch The West Wing? You should.
I watched the first 2 seasons.
Okay. One of the kids here from Polytechnic's dad is one of the characters in it.
Who?
Josh. Yeah, he's Josh's son. And I know the kid from Polytech.
And you
And I
know,
went to camp with him.
you know Saul from Breaking Bad.
He judged me last year.
Did he?
He picked me up round 1 last year. No, 2 years ago, apologies.
Yeah, he's like the dad of the kid who debates in our league.
Yeah. But anyway, I always tell my friend how much I love The West Wing, and he shows up to the cost of like 2 hours ago, go around and just hands me a signed script, and the front of it says I'm like, great job doing debate and stuff, blah blah blah, and then the end says, don't beat my son. It's signed.
It's very sincere.
That's interesting.
No, I don't know, dude. I checked pretty much how
Yeah.
but actually
Okay.
pulled our thing.
So I voted neg. So I guess their idea is that limiting the topic to U.S. persons and/or corporations, that's a better and more predictable limit, leading to in-depth debate and portable skills. The F doesn't extend to we meet in the 1AR and doesn't meet its counter. I'm not sure if it actually does or not. I think, like, my guess, so I think that the argument that the F is trying to make is that the word domestic in the plan text, which says, let's see, I mean, I probably would have, I don't think there's enough, like, technically in the 1AR to justify me voting F, regardless of the truth of it, but I wasted time trying to figure it out anyway for myself. I guess maybe it's, maybe it wasn't a waste of time, because I guess part of my job is this part of it too. But I think that, okay, so I think the argument that you could say is that, like, it says domestic surveillance of computer software vulnerabilities or exploits unknown to relevant vendors. So the word domestic in the plan text limits that to the computer software vulnerabilities and exploits of U.S. companies and persons. So, like, you don't stop them from putting 0 days backdoors in other, like, in foreign persons or corporations. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's, like, maybe the argument you're trying, that's what, like, I think that's, like, kind of the argument I think that your cards you read in the 2AC would support, is it, like, and them like, sort of not saying corporations aren't people, and I mean, they do make that argument in the 1 and R, but they don't really need to in the 2 and R, but, like, but it's sort of, you know, that interpretation would would be too broad. So I think you'd have to, like, maybe that would be, like, to say in the 1AR is that, like, that thing, like, you know, plan text in a vacuum, we only limited domestic corporations, we'll concede McCormick their definition of domestic, but at worst it's like solvency defense. Does that make sense? Like that kind of argument? I don't know if that's what your solvency evidence suggests, though. It seems like it would be kind of like, it's the software vulnerabilities that they're, because, like, computer software would be like the programs, and it wouldn't be the domain of any specific, it's not like each corporation has its own software, which is, I mean, some have proprietary stuff, I guess, that they use in-house, or like, but most would probably, you know, if it would be some kind of just general software. So it could be, they would like, these encryption backdoors would apply to multiple corporations and persons, so at best you'd be extra T, I guess, which is their 1C argument, that it would involve both domestic and foreign persons and corporations. I don't know, any questions about that? I think that, I mean, I'll just say that, I mean, maybe you know this, because they were both of the 2ARs and the 2AR and 2NR were a little short, but you don't have to, like, extend case, or, like, and, you know, if they collapse to T in the 2NR. So just so you know that, you could have spent 5 minutes on it. Maybe it's just a question of not having 5 minutes worth of stuff to say. But I don't know, any questions?
I know the 2NR wasn't full, it wasn't exactly the best, but I often have trouble when there's, like, one 1AR argument on a flow, how to make a more effective 2NR without having a structure to go off of. Do you have tips on that?
Well, I guess like you have like almost 5 minutes of prep, so just think about what the 2AR might be. You know, like what are kind of the true arguments? You know, like how could they actually spend this? What arguments do you need to preempt? And then maybe, you know, if there's the 2AC arguments, I guess you could just sort of answer them or spend more time explaining the. I mean, I understand. I mean, I'd rather you do what you did and give a 3-minute to an hour though than like extend everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you could probably go more in depth than you did.
Yeah.
All right, good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Oh, whose is this?
Is that your flash drive?
Yeah.
Where are we?
No, they haven't with us.
Clean and Tavern, we sent it out.
Go check them out.
Tavern still doesn't have like that.
Yeah, we're debating one of your teams, Scott.
Oh.
Yeah.
Where? What time?
6:15.
3.
I'm gonna go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should go over there.
Wait, wait.
Okay. Go over there. Oh god, let me just do my
Dude, I think you just said. Do you have enough time?
Yeah.
Hey!
Just good.
Fine, actually have to bait. Actually have to bait finally.
Yeah.
No idea. That doesn't sound
Oh my
very
god.
logical.
I think my favorite debate I've watched this year was Ryan Zhang going for his against a common core. Oh, no, it wasn't common core. It was
Yeah.
Chaminade.
They're like, it's like collection of data, and I was like, yo, this more is
No, but,
standards.
Why do I forget the name of the girl that was in our lab at GDI from Coronado?
Oh,
Maddie.
Maddie?
Is this Maddie's here?
No,
There we go.
Maddie is here.
There's actually a
T.
We have to.
Or just no impact. I don't know anything.
What's your app?
It's the last one. I sent them there's an updated card and I sent it to one of them. Whoever's email was on the wiki.
Yeah, it's the same as the ones for Meadows plus one.
One Scott's kids.
Which one?
MS.
J and small.
K4. Well, I have one.
Let's rearrange this. I don't want to arrange this way. Oh, you want? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I'll throw it there. Here, I'll move this one.
What?
Yeah. How about y'all?
Watch the round and in the round like this.
You watched what was it?
Oh yeah, in the round like this. It's like, oh, how can you get in the shower? Like, what's happening in all of this? Like, why does that matter? It's like, whew,
That's rough.
rip.
I heard young swearing and it was like
Huh?
weird. Young swearing is weird.
Have fun.
So, how's life?
Alright.
Nice.
Oh.
Why didn't Jerry and Rom come here?
Jerry couldn't come because he had to take the SAT. And then Rom, you know, was just, since Jerry couldn't come, it was less worth it. So, he could come with someone else, whatever, but then less of a point. Better
Well,
to
yeah,
spend the
like-
weekend catch up on grades and stuff.
It's like a finals bid.
Well, that's fine. They would come. That's not why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that like, if they came here, there's a pretty good chance they would win.
I mean.